Hello and welcome. Today, in order to better understand the reasons for the Taimanov attack, we'll look at a very closely related variation known as the Mikenas variation. So if we go to the Modern Benoni here, where now bishop b5 check is the Taimanov. Instead of that, a very natural question to ask is, what if I plays the direct e5 without first provoking something after bishop b5, let's say knight b7 e5. What if the direct e5 is played instead? And so here the key difference is that black has not played a piece to d7. So now after taking, this knight can come to d7, and black has equality. But there are a few interesting lines here, and white has a pretty good win rate here on lichess. So the task of the black player is not so easy as it may seem. The first thing to notice here with the white is that our e5 pawn is attacked twice. So we have to play e6, so we move. And here most black players have taken on e6. A significant number have played knight e5, where we have the very nice move bishop b5. And you see that the pawns control d7 and c6. And so the king has to move over. You can't block or else the pawn would take it. So king f8, knight f3. It's just a natural move. A lot of black players have taken this pawn and then went up with a very exposed king after white castles, lining up the rook against a black king. The king moves out of any discovered attacks here. What we'll take, play queen f3, and this is a checkmate threat, so black defends with queen e7, and now it plays a very nice bishop h6, bishop g5 is a move, everything wins here for white. White is absolutely crushing this position. Also important to note is that here after e5, taking, and a very large number of black players here played knight g4, and have lost instantly to bishop b5 check, where we see that now with bishop blocks we can take on g4. If instead of bishop d7, black plays king f8. It's very natural. Why would I give up this knight for nothing? White has the amazing e6, where we see that these pawns have a huge cramping influence on the black pieces, and for example, one line goes knight f6. And black players like to take this pawn because it really just cramps them. They don't have productive plans besides taking the pawn. But after castling, again we get that open f-file as you see in the other lines. They take on d5, and we just try to swarm in. We have a huge initiative and should win with this black king so exposed. The initiative is maybe +5. e6, more common is a knight e5, where again we see very similar concepts of here there's actually the amazing shot. Bishop g5, again f6, we're just going to castle on. Kill the king, bishop g5. There's some awesome stuff here with queen c7 and at d6, where the pawns will roll up the board and mate the king. After f6, there's a few options here. Knight e5 is pretty straightforward. The idea that if black takes this, we take the queen. So instead, black players have chosen to take this bishop here, where we have this very nice attacking sequence here, absolutely crushing black of castling check, queen f3, threatening mate, queen e7. If queen f8, we can even take this, sack a rook and put a rook on the f-file, and the pawns will just roll up the board and checkmate black with no problems. So instead, queen e7, where now we have a very nice d6. Asking the queen how it plans to keep defending the f7 square. So if they took, we would checkmate on f7. So instead, queen e6 and bishop c4. We see this game is over. It's a very nice line. In this position, both captures are possible, so we looked at both of them. But also possible is taking this bishop here, where the black king dies in an even faster way. There's just absolutely no moves for black without sacrificing some material. The best move is knight c6, where we can take it. Knight a6, we have knight e4, and we see that the pressure on the king is unstoppable. Black will die. Although many black players have played knight g4, which we just looked at as refuted by bishop b5, most players play knight fd7, which is the best move. Here we play e6. The pawn is attacked twice, so we have to move it forwards. And there's a few lines for black here. One is taking the pawn is a very popular choice. I think we looked at knight e5 already without taking. So f6, d6, and now black players like to pin the pawn with queen e7. Here we have knight d5. And bishop e5 is the most common move, but it's very inaccurate. The best is just to simply castle and allow white this exchange here. With the idea that with our own threats, black has plenty of counterplay and should be totally fine in this endgame. The problem is that when black delays castling and defends it with something like bishop e5, we can play knight f3 to hit it first, and then knight f6 is the best idea, but most black players will play bishop d6, where now we have a bishop h6, and we see black is cut off from castling. So even though we're down a pawn, the black king can't castle. This may not be a big deal in most endgames, but here, with such open files in the middle of the board, it means that black's going to have a much harder time activating their pieces, and white is actually a +3 in this position here after a knight c6 castling queenside. So black has to be very careful in this endgame, although we are down a pawn. And this is one of the main reasons why they don't play the Mikenas Variation very often, because if black knows what they're doing, they get an endgame here where they're up a pawn, and they have no risk if they can simply get their king to safety. And this line shows one of the main reasons why it's not played is the e5 pawn becomes very overextended and cannot be supported, as in many hypermodern openings. There's simply not enough activity from white to support this huge center, and black can counterattack and win it. So I hope that was a good overview of the lines after d, e, f, e. Now we'll take a look at what happens if black doesn't take the pawn and instead retreats with the knight, which is a surprisingly common move. Here white has two options, which are knight b5 and knight e4. There are a lot of moves, but these are the only two that don't leave white totally in the dust here. Black wants to take on e5 next, and not allow any shenanigans with the e6 move. These two moves seem to me to transpose, so I like knight e4. And after taking, we play knight d6, and then take the bishop on c8. The same thing happens with knight b5. And here we play knight f3. Black has a ton of moves here. This is a very complicated position. White has given up a pawn for this weak black king, but if white is not careful about it, the black king will escape after moving the rook, and white will simply be losing, so you have to be very accurate here when you play the Mikenas. So rook e8, and we play f5. The best idea is for black to play e4. If king f8 seems very natural. d6 is also a move, opening up this diagonal, and now knight takes f7 sacks especially are always in the air. So if black plays c4, meaning rook f8 would just hit a bishop c4 or something, and we're totally fine. c4, we have amazing knight f7, and if king f7, queen d5, we can take g6, and then take c4, and we're just absolutely winning. Instead, black can't take the sacrifice, has to play knight b6 to protect c4, preventing bishop c4. Here we play taking g6, and now bishop e3. The idea is to take this knight at some point in the future. So if now black takes our knight, we play a very nice rook c1. And the idea is to take this knight and then take on c4 with the bishop. Whereas if we took it directly, we would not be able to take on c4, and black could force us to trade the queens. Even here, it's about equal, but it's very hard to play this, I think. So first we play rook c1, and now maintaining our advantage. The idea is to take and then take on c4 with this light square bishop, instead of queen d5 allowing queen e6 and trading the queens. Here, instead of king f8, also natural is simply taking the pawn, where we have the nice replay of knight h4, wanting knight f5, and start an attack on the king's side. So there are a few options for black here. So for example, with f4, we would play knight f5, and then queen g4, targeting the bishop. And I see white has a very nice initiative. Knight h4, and so a knight f6 would open the queen's eyes to f5. Here we play bishop g5, with the idea that something stupid like h6, we can take f6 and play queen h5 with a nice double attack. Very good position. So for example, bishop g5 seems to defend both things, but bishop b5, rook f8, castling f4, This resembles a lot of other lines we will see. White has a very strong attack here. Here, instead of the nonsense move h6, stronger is king f8, where we can the bishop b5, hitting the rook moves. If knight bd7, it's meant to protect the rook, but we have a knight f5 here, so the rook has to move. Then we can castle, putting a lot of pressure on the f5 pawn. If black moves it with f4, we can take f6, and then play queen h5, where again we have a lot of pressure on the king side. If instead of that, black tries taking on d5, queen b3, hitting the rook, and the idea is that if black does nothing, like knight c6 for example, we will take on f6 and then take on d5. There's maybe a few more moves here. We will reach an endgame where we're better up in exchange. So, but that's the best option for black. If instead they move the rook somewhere, we will take knight f5, because now we've castled, the rook protects the knight here. This is not her repertoire on the Mikenas, so I'll only show one more interesting line here. I won't go into every single possible move black can make. The move e4 is very natural, so we play knight g5, and now king f8. If h6, we have the very nice sequence here of d6, and now knight f7, where if black takes h5, we can go like this, and white is better. So instead, the blunder of taking f7, the sacrifice, we can go bishop c4, and then queen d5, where we see that mate is inevitable here after bishop c3. Black can try to hold that, but mate happens on h7. So for this reason, knight g5 at h6, giving white a free move, is not advised. Instead, black should play king f8. That was all this sideline stuff after the Mikenas, and then knight d7, where white has knight e4, and again, this is the sequence to remember. And white sacrifices a pawn for strong initiative, and can maintain the balance, but has to play very accurately. This is true with a lot of the Mikenas variations, especially in the main lines, where black takes and then plays knight d7, trying to attack this pawn. We see that black can win the pawn, even though white is technically equal in the endgame. It's a very hard task, and for this reason, the Mikenas should not be played, and instead, a much stronger move here is bishop b5, waiting for a better moment to play e5, where it will not become so extended. I hope this video on the Mikenas was useful to you, and I hope you have a good day.